Hello, welcome back to episode 23 of the P S Gilmore story. You're all very welcome. The last episode that we had, as such, temporarily at least closed down the story of the National Peace Jubilee and the biggest entertainment party, at least at that stage, in America. Today we're going to look at that time frame, but from a different perspective, because there's a tendency to look at history as being an event that operates as an isolated situation, which has little bearing on everything around it and so on and so forth. And that's not the way life works. The National Peace Jubilee is a great example. It affected quite a lot of things in America. Not just the music, but how people reacted to each other. How, for instance, the new President Grant and his cabinet reacted to the South and so on. And that has to be studied more in time. Now that we know that the National Peace Jubilee was indeed the closing bells, if you like, for the Civil War. In this case, we have to look at the consequences of the National Peace Jubilee. How did it affect, for instance, Gilmore, or how did it affect music, and how Gilmores Band itself reacted to the sudden popularity beyond what they could have ever believed. And so what I did as an example is I pretended, if you like, that this was an event in my lifetime in the 60s or 70s. And how much do I remember of my life? Or how much do we remember of each other's lives? And the fact is, we remember very little. We remember the main events, the big family events, the baptisms, the marriages, the sadly the deaths and so on. But do we remember the little dates between those dates? And the fact is, probably not. If we pull out the photo albums, oh yeah, I remember that uncle or that aunt or that distant cousin or whatever it is, but we don't really remember until we shake our memory banks. So in Gilmore's case, I had to figure out, well, what happened after the National Peace Jubilee and how did they react and how did they develop. And so one of the things that I did was I made a rough diary for Gilmore for the next few years. And what could I find out in that period, in that time frame? And of course the first month would have been June of 1869, followed by July and August, etc. And the fact at this moment in time was I knew nothing. Anyway, I was checking on eBay, and eventually something turned up here on eBay, and I'm looking at the various little photographs and so on, and I noticed that there were some photographs. One of the photographs had a slight snippet of the name P S Gilmore, and I thought, could it be? But there was no explanation. I was nearly terrified to ask a question online because of the fact that it would attract a lot others' attentions to it. So I bid for it, and this is what I bought. I bought this beautiful big old book, a ledger, you might say. And this ledger, it turned out to be from Samoset House, Plymouth, Samoset House, the road, and it's in Plymouth, Massachusetts. The marbleized texture that you would get on the older books, and it was a hotel. And so people would come into the hotel and they would sign, and they would, this is the first date, June the 9th of 1869. So we can immediately assume that these people were either en route or not attending the National Peace Jubilee in Boston itself. And the signatures are beautiful, and they're so flowery. The word nowadays is they're full of calligraphy, calligraphic, almost drawn signatures, and so flowery with swirls and so on. I do a little bit of this myself, but nowadays we don't really take too much pride. Here's a beautiful page on Saturday the 26th. I'll see if you can zoom in on this. And so there it is, Mrs. Worthington and child, and then underneath this Mrs. Horace Patton with 2 children and a nurse from Cincinnati. Beautiful signature altogether, so lovely swirls for Cincinnati, a treble swirl. This is absolutely gorgeous. So basically, anyway, I started becoming very intrigued by the type of personnel, the type of clientele, I should say, that was attracted by this hotel. And bear in mind, this is the 19th century. We know quite a bit about the so-called Wild West, although sometimes I wonder really what we see in the movies, that it really bears very little relationship to what happened, generally speaking. There was a heck of a lot of hard-working people and a hell of a lot of neighbourliness in the Wild West, which we don't really, but I suppose it sells more movies to have guns been used in the OK Corral than to see corn been planted. So on and on it goes, and this place seemed to be very, very busy. And as I leafed through the paper, we're now up to July the 15th, and again a new pen been used, a new quill, because you see the way the actual some of the letters are thicker than some of the others been done on the sharp side of the quill. So it's beautifully drawn and so on. We got various people from different parts of the world. I'll show you some of those now in a second. And here we have, this was the way the actual page looked. Now, I'm just going to so up here we've got the 2 signatures that attracted my attention on eBay originally. P S Gilmore and Matthew Arbuckle. Now, I hadn't an idea at this moment in time of this event. And again, this was the previous date noted in the book was the 27th of July. And that date was the last entry. In this one, however, we ended up having, sorry for 1 second, we ended up having the whole of Gilmores Band booked in here. And this was incredible. So we had P S Gilmore, Arbuckle, Ingraham, Richardson, Mullally. He was the man that pressed the button when the cannons outside the Coliseum were to be fired. Zeller, Frederick, Doggett, etc., etc. Most of the band that played here were in action in the Civil War. But what became very, very intriguing about this place and about this time and about Gilmore himself was that, first of all, if you see up here on the computer screen, I happen to trace, if I can get this up here, on the screen here it says, the memorial states that the grand serenade by Gilmore's Band at the Samoset House, Plymouth, came off on Thursday evening as promised and was followed by a ball. So this was actually a complete and utter success. And I started going through the actual register itself in more detail. Why? Because I wanted to find the context of this hotel. What did this hotel do? How did this hotel practice its business, and so on and so forth? And I started seeing some very interesting personnel, and I have not, by the way, I have not found them all as yet. In this hotel at this moment in time, in this register, signed in were people like Edward L. Pierce, an author and politician; Frederick Law Olmsted, a designer of Central Park and also parts of Washington DC, as well as the sanitary fund after the Civil War; Charles Endicott, a politician and treasurer; James Parton, a famous biographer; Robert Carter Pittman, a temperance advocate; Ellen W. Sture, S-T-U-R-E, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, a New York circus clown, very famous of the period; Dr. Henry Baldrige, an abolitionist; Asher Tyler, a U.S. Republican from, a U.S. representative from New York; Timothy Whiting Bancroft, an English professor; William Willis, a Portland mayor; Charles Brigham, don't know what he did actually; Professor Charles A.E. Anthem, don't know what he did; Moses Farmer, an electrical engineering inventor; L. Bradford Prince, the 14th governor of New Mexico; and a Frenchman called Théophile Gautier, a French poet, very highly regarded in the 19th century. So that just gives you an idea of the type of personnel that was floating through the hotels of not just the Samoset House, but the Astor House in New York, or Hoffman House, or whatever in New York, and similar hotels in the big cities in America elsewhere. But also what's beautiful about this is, I'll give you an example. For instance, you have associated artists of the period coming along here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 people from Kelly and Sons Minstrels, the associated artists of Kelly and Sons. There's Another one here, the artists of M.A. Bacon, Detroit. And again, what we notice with this here, and all through this, you see this happening. The name of the person, the residence they came from, the residential address, the time, the room, and the horse. So, for instance, most people would travel with 4 horses. If they had no horses, they would come on the railroad company. And so that would be significant itself, because they're part of their business is obviously the railroad company. In this case, the railroad company has built the hotel itself. Here is the actual Samoset house itself. This is from 1907, from a postcard at that time. It didn't change an awful lot from when Gilmore was in it in 1869 and other times. Here's 2 brochures from Samoset House, and just a slightly earlier one, I'd say from the 1880s. You see here hack livery and boarding, single and double teams, and it gives you the list of the mileage of nearby places, again because people might want to take a team out and just see the countryside and so on. Very like your rental cars nowadays. And on this side, the scenery, the drives, the purity of the air and the water, and so on. Beautiful little brochure. And then I picked up another one, and I think this is actually slightly older. And it shows, for instance, a little bit of history about Samoset House. It was built in 1845, points of interest around it, ancient dwellings, pilgrim national monument, etc. And again, it emphasizes the purity of the air and water. And on this side, hack, livery and boarding. So you're getting a room. You also need to get a room on board for your horse or your team and so on. Then you've got your nurse, you've got your children. It's becoming an expensive time traveling, indeed. So that's basically an idea. And what you end up doing when you do as I did here, you end up with a story that is in context. And if it's in context, now you have an idea of the pattern of events of that period, and why and how they lived, if you like, in that period. I know it's just a hotel register, but to have it from 150 years ago is truly incredible. And this, by the way, this page here is to hold the blotting sheet, because obviously you're writing with ink as distinct from pen. And you can see the ink there as such, and some blotching there. So I just thought I'd show you that and give you a little bit of, if you like, a break from the regular history ones. And we'll be back next week, and that'll be episode 24 with more from the P S Gilmore story, and obviously from the story of America from his perspective. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and click like and subscribe if you've got a chance there, please. I'd appreciate all your support, and tell your friends about this. Thank you very much. And it's bloomin' warm here in Ireland. I hope it's not as warm where you are. Listen, thank you very much, and bye.